And welcome everybody to another amazing week right here on the Andrew Cooperrider show. I want to take this show. We're going to talk about this one-time spending bill. As you all know, spending, especially wasteful spending, is certainly a passion project of mine, keeping our eyes on it. And I had mentioned the bill we're going to talk about earlier this year, saying keep your eyes on it, something's going to happen with it, and something did. So we will be discussing all this one-time spending, a bill, $1.7 billion, one-time spending that went through the legislature, currently sitting on the governor's desk. Obviously, when you're listening to this, it could be off his desk. Could have signed it, could have let it pass without signing it, could have vetoed it. Based upon the voting that occurred in the legislature, I'm going to say he probably didn't veto it, but who knows, it may look ridiculous. However, that being said, I do first want to encourage you to like, comment, share, subscribe. If you're listening to this on the podcast format, make sure you leave a 5-star review. If you're listening to this radio or TV, you like what I'm saying, you want to make sure you don't miss a bit, you can head over to theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's theandrewshow.com, and look at all the fantastic places you can listen and stay up to date on everything that's going on. But without further ado, let's dig down into it. So we have this bill, House Bill 900. I want to say House Bill 800 because it was originally an $800 million bill. It's since more than doubled to $1.7 billion. But what this is it's a one-time spending bill. You see, the legislature several years back passed this framework that they want to follow of how to reduce the income tax down. And they did it based upon hitting certain revenue markers and then having to hit certain spending markers as well. But they can't afford to do all those projects they want to do and hit those spending markers. So instead, out of the budget trust fund account or the savings account, when they feel they have enough money, they go ahead and do one-time expenditures out of there that do not count against that framework. They did this 2 years ago. Bunch of waste in it, and they're doing it now. Bunch of waste in it. But first, let's talk about how it was passed, because I think that's incredibly important to understand in this process. So first, the one-time spending bill was $800 million. It is House Bill 900. I want to say 800 because it's 800 million. So, it'd be funny if they named it House Bill 800, but it's House Bill 900. And they had just authorized a bill that had $800 million of spending to be spent on, they would figure out later. And then this would get passed and they could put in place committee subs, and when it gets kicked back and everything else, and replace it with a different spending bill, which is exactly what happened. And the replacement ballooned to $1.7 billion, and it has a lot of earmarked spending in it. Now, out of that 1.7, most of it isn't actually something you would take issue with, generally speaking, as a taxpayer. A lot of it's going to things like water projects, sewer projects. That's always something they can spend a lot of money on. Water and sewer utilities, maybe road construction, the kinds of things you generally don't have an issue with. There's also some things that perhaps is worth a double look at times, but in general, you don't disagree with the subject of the spending. For an example, government spending on things like addiction and rehab and those kinds of things. You don't typically take issue with the idea of spending money on it. However, as always, you've got to look at what they're actually doing with those funds. What are they actually spending that on, and take a deeper dive into where everything's going. But I did set aside out of this 1.7, about $300 million of it that I'm going to call wasteful spending. I'm going to use that bold claim. Maybe you don't, but you can hear me rattle through it here and make your own determination. But the other issue I have with this bill, outside of the eye-popping amount and outside the fact that they spend a lot of money on it, is how it's passed. So The process here is that legislators submit their earmark, what they want to bring home the bacon to their group with, or to their district with. So they submit these projects that have to do with their districts, and then that gets added into the bill. And there's a limit on how many projects you can submit, and there's a limit on, of course, dollar figure and everything else. But in general, you just submit what you want to see. And then the chair of the budget committees are able to add that into the bill. But here's a dirty little secret. Nobody knows what anybody requested to be in it. So when you look at spending, as I'm talking about spending, and I say this spending's in it, and you want to know, well, which legislator wanted that in the bill? Well, we don't know. We don't know who earmarked it. We don't know who requested it. In fact, there's only a small handful, like as in you could count them almost on one hand, of legislators that know that information. And the rules are that they're not to disclose that information, including to the Speaker of the House. So when you ask who sent it, who's spending it, we don't know. Here's the other thing about how this bill is passed. It's passed last minute, without legislators really even knowing fully what's in it. This is tens and tens of pages. I believe it's like 60, 70 pages of spending $1.7 billion. And they get a copy of that bill literally just hours before they're supposed to vote on it. They take it down to the last minute. They do this with the budget too. They take it down to the last minute and they say, well, if you want this spending to go forward, you have to vote yes. You have to push it forward. You can't vote no, because if you vote it down, well, we don't have time to fix or take out anything that you would want taken out. They do this with the budget even more so, because with the budget itself, if the legislature fails to make a budget, the governor gets free rein to make their own budget. So they love to hold that budget to the last minute and essentially force the legislators to vote on a pile of turds mixed in with a little bit of, gold, maybe some good things, but they put a nice little sprinkling of turds on top in order to make it all kind of suck. But the legislators are faced with, okay, we can pass this kind of sucky budget or let the governor have free rein and spend it on whatever they want. And, we don't want to do that. So we do have to pass a budget, of course. And so this leads to a whole helping of problems within our budgeting system, because they're able to hold on to it last minute, shove a bunch of things into it, and then tell the legislators pass it or else, and it kind of sucks. It also eliminates the ability for feedback. So as I go through this spending bill, you're going to be like, wow, I disagree with that, I agree with that, I disagree with that. Well, nobody ever had the opportunity to share that, how they feel with their representative, because of how it was passed. And when we're spending something like, $1.7 billion of our money on something, perhaps, the taxpayer's opinion should matter in that conversation. I feel like, you're there to represent the taxpayers. It's not your money, it's their money. They should have some feedback on how that's spent. Really speaks to kind of the way they think, the philosophy they have behind government spending. But coming up on a break, when we get back, we'll start discussing these projects that make up that $300 million out of the $1.7 billion that I take issue with. Perhaps you will too. You'll hear my reasoning on that as we work our way as best we can through the list. There's many things on the list, so it is certainly going to be quite a discussion. But till we get back, if you want to check out, once again, if you're listening on the radio or TV, you want to check out where you can listen to more of the Andrew Cooperrider Show, you can visit theandrewshow.com. But otherwise, we'll be back in a few short minutes. Delicious. Oh, what's in here? Oh, well, what's in my tumbler here, the Andrew Cooperrider Show tumbler, available for sale at brewed.store, is 1776, a brewed coffee, a Kentucky proud product that's roasted right here in Kentucky, of course. You can pick yourself up a bag at brewed.store. Free shipping on orders over $85. And they're sold in per pound, both ground, whole bean, and K-cups. If you like your little K-cup machines, we have that for you too. And the best part is, per pound, it's cheaper than most of the boutique freedom-loving coffees out there. And this one's made right here in your own backyard. I know, that's fantastic. So pick yourself up. We've got 1776, a French roasted dark blend, which is historically funny because, of course, the French financed the revolution. And then also we have one of our other signature blends, Tyrant's Tears, a coffee that we meticulously harvest from famous tyrants like Annie Bashir, Pol Pot, and, of course, Mao. Additionally, we have other single origin coffees such as Cameroon Pea Berry, Kenya, Peru. Fantastic, fantastic blends. Go ahead and pick yourself up a bag today. Not only will you be supporting the show, but also you'll be putting in your mouth a delicious and tasty black nectar called coffee. So order yours today. Brewed.store. Once again, it's BREWED.store. Brewed.store. Free shipping. Orders over $85. Pick yourself up a bag and pick yourself up one of these spiffy tumblers. Andrew Cooperrider Show tumbler today. Once again, that's brewed.store. And you're back here on the Andrew Cooperrider Show talking now about House Bill 900, the bill that spends $1.7 billion in one-time projects. I've identified $300 million of that I have some questions about, and I thought maybe we could go ahead and dig into it, right? So first here we have $80 million earmarked for providing forgivable loans to mega development private industry projects. Another $100 million to the economic development grants as well. And I'm going to pause here because there's some other economic development things we'll start to dig into. But you know, right off the bat, $180 million in extra funding beyond the millions we already give, tens of millions we already give to the economic development, means we're really pumping that number up there that we're going to give for this economic development. And I just have an issue when it comes to these things, mainly because I don't see where we're getting a lot of these economic development projects I'm going to go through. They're moving money off to private industries, private people to create quote unquote jobs. And we don't pause it all to have this discussion. And this is the kind of debate that we should be having on the floor. Because one, the economic development cabinet under Bashir has really just been throwing darts at a board. It doesn't seem like we have any kind of cohesive overall economic development strategy. There's no specific industries we're targeting. I mean, for a while, Bashir was really hot there on the whole batteries thing, but we see what's happened with that. But you know, we're just kind of throwing darts at the board saying, okay, come out here, come do this. Or I guess if you're going to bring jobs, okay. Not really thinking about where they're bringing jobs to, not really thinking about do they need jobs in that area, not thinking about how that impacts the lives of the people in that area as well, because that's the other thing that really bears some discussion here. I mean, after all, this is taxpayer funds. How much do the people in these areas want it? This is something that happens all the time with these data centers. You know, you'll hear the governments of these areas really pushing for data centers. Despite the fact, you know, realistically, it brings a whole lot of construction jobs initially, but then after that, it brings maybe handfuls of jobs at the most. How many jobs that it creates are remote? How many are actually there? How much actually goes into, you know, jobs in the area? How many people locally that currently live there, whose money it is you're taking, whose communities will be impacted, actually get affected by it? But the other thing that happens when these things come in, and we've seen this over in Glendale with the battery plant, we see this in all kinds of communities, that things just get more expensive and people get priced out of it. And so if you don't have a large amount of unemployment in that area, if you're not at a weird point with the government where you just need a bunch more funding in order to make it work, and even then I have questions, because what a lot of times we'll hear is that, well, the people in the area don't, quote unquote, want it. They do want roads, they want bridges, they want all these things done in their area, but they can't have those things unless we have more tax revenue. So we have to bring in more people to bring in more tax revenues, because of course they also don't want an increase in their taxes. But the problem with that claim is I've never heard anybody say that there's a specific number. Like, once you hit this number of residents, once you hit this level of funding, you should be good. It always seems like they need more and more and more. And it just seems like a lot of our money ends up going to these fluff projects that, you know, while they're great for the community, thinking of a big one right now is a lot of taxpayer funded like fitness centers and things like that. Well, that's great for the community, and I'm sure people maybe want that in the area. The question is that a top priority of government? Are you bringing in and causing this massive increase in taxes because property values go up and so you're shelling out more money there? Are you causing that while at the same time, you're able to give them some bread and circuses, but meanwhile they can't live in their homes anymore. Their community's losing that feel to it. Is that something they really want? Nobody has that discussion. I just think we should need to. But also, just moving money off to private hands out of taxpayer funds without any kind of discussion, really, really iffy. Here's another one, $2.5 million to buy an off-road park. So this is going to the fiscal court, I believe, in Harlan County to buy a off-road park that I guess the private owners of want to get rid of or selling off. And I guess they're worried about it closing down and losing that tourism income. I'm going to talk for a moment of just information here that I know. So off-road parks are, don't get me wrong, they're great to visit. I'm an off-road enthusiast. My son and I ride dirt bikes. We've been to all of them: Wildcat, Hollerwood, Lane Between the Lakes. We've rode a lot of the trails. We enjoy it. We go just this past weekend, depending on when you're listening to this. Just this past weekend, I was checking out Hollerwood, which recently bought up by the government out there, kind of seeing everything that's going into it. It is certainly interesting. Trails are still a little iffy out there for those of you who are interested. For people who ride dirt bikes and not side-by-sides, the, loose dirt can be that they have out there right now is a little bit of an issue, especially when you're going downhill. But anyways, and by loose dirt, I mean fine dirt. But regardless, these off-road parks are just, they remind me a lot of things like trampoline parks and skating rinks. Like, oh, this is the hot thing. If we bring this into Eastern Kentucky, it'll definitely bring out more tourism. Here's my issue with even this specific park. So one, there's another privately owned off-road park that is like 40 minutes away. It actually still goes into Harlan County. It's kind of on the border of some counties. They also have like a petting zoo there and cabin rentals, everything else. And so there's another one close by. So how many more quote unquote tourists will it bring in? Then also, how many of those tourists how much are they spending? Is it really worthwhile? Here's my point. Okay, so if the off-road park itself was going to make money, then a private individual would be willing to buy that off-road park. And you're going to hear this as I talk about private companies receiving this money. If this is worthwhile, if that company actually makes money, if this is actually something with long-term benefit, then you would see private actors willing to go ahead and invest in it and do it without needing government assistance. But that's not going on. So how much can it pay for itself if the private investors aren't willing to grab it? And then as a off-roading tourist, I can tell you, I don't spend a lot of money in the towns I'm going to. I pay the off-roading fee there, and then we ride, and then we kind of leave because, to be quite honest, especially when you're pulling trailers, and a lot of these people pulling side-by-sides, they have some pretty big trailers and everything else. It can be hard to find a place that you can park at. It's hard to find a place you can eat at in the area, especially if they're not offering it. I know Wildcat has like nothing near it. And so that has to be considered as well. It's not going to bring in a lot of tourism to the downtown Hazard or anything like that because you can't. You're pulling a truck with side-by-sides on it. Where are you going to park, right? And it's certainly, like I said, it's definitely creeping into what should be a private venture. $2.2 million in one-time extra funding to the Glendale Training Center at the Elizabeth Community and Technical College. This was built specifically to train employees at the Ford battery plant that's kind of shuttered right now, definitely holding off on what it's doing. And just seems weird to be putting another $2.2 million into funding into a training center that was built to train people how to build Ford. But by the way, that's another thing too. On top of all the money we gave them, we literally built and funded an employee training program for them that even after they've shut down and laid off people, we're still putting another $2.2 million into. $3 million for an outdoor amphitheater in Breckenridge County. That really just seemed like a lot of money to me. $30 million for an outdoor amphitheater. Definitely look into that. Here's another one. $350,000 to the London Laurel County Tourist Commission for a feasibility study and preliminary design work for an outdoor venue, racetrack, and RV park in Laurel County. This is once again just something that If it's worthwhile, you would think a private entity is going to come in here. But also, as we talk about these tourism dollars, because this is going to come up a lot, people talking about, well, it's great tourism dollars, great tourism dollars. Because of the way Kentucky's tax system is set up, that really needs to be fixed before we really start saying tourism is going to be the answer to Eastern Kentucky's problems. Because the jobs, understand how counties make their money, right? They make their money off of property tax. They make their money off of occupational tax. That's also an income tax. They make their money off insurance tax, and they got a few other revenues. But the main thing when they talk about tourism dollars is how are you going to capture that? See, local cities and counties cannot impose their own sales tax. It's not allowed by the state constitution. So when you're talking about tourism dollars, you got to ask yourself, okay, how much in payroll is that actually going to generate? Because tourism dollars a lot of times don't mean a lot of jobs. A tourist restaurant might mean, 20 jobs created in the area, and a lot of them are making tips and not reporting their income. So really you just have the handful of line cooks and the manager. And so you're really just making revenues off those couple of people because you can't earn money off of the sales tax of it. Now, some areas are allowed to do like a restaurant tax, but you have to fall into a special category to qualify for that. But for an example, take the off-road park, right? How many jobs does an off-road park actually generate? Like 6 or 7 at the most. You got a person that works the front counter. You might have a person or two that patrol the trails. And then, of course, the upkeep on the trails probably is done during the week, and it's probably the same people that patrol the trails doing some of the upkeep and taking care of when it comes to it. So not that many jobs, and most tourism attractions are this way. They don't necessarily create a lot of jobs unless you're putting in place like a theme park or something. Take this RV park that they're talking about, this RV racetrack, outdoor venue RV park. How much in taxpayer funds are going to fund it? I don't know. The $350,000 though, just for the feasibility study on it, seems like a lot. Well, we're coming up on a break. We've got more coming up after this. More. If this doesn't sound like a lot, we've got more, and we're going to start talking too about nonprofits. That's going to come up as well. So we'll have all that more when we come back here on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Make sure, if you're listening in the podcast version, you leave that 5-star review. If you want to leave a 1-star, just don't worry about it. Don't even leave a review. We don't need to hear that kind of negativity over here. But we'll be back in a few short minutes. Do you hear that? I do. It's Bashir crying. Why? Because you're listening to the Andrew Cooperrider Show. And I thought to myself, why should we let those tears go to waste? Like any good capitalist, I said, that is a resource that can be sold. So we capture those tears from Andy Bashir and other famous tyrants like Pol Pot, Mao, whoever else. And we collect them up and we put them into a delicious coffee called Tyrant's Tears, available at brood.store. Once again, that's brood.store. You can pick yourself up a spiffy Andrew Cooperrider Show tumbler while you're at it. And get yourself a nice bag. Free shipping on orders over $85. We have Tyrant's Tears in 1776, our signature blends. We also have flavored coffees such as Swiss chocolate and bourbon for those of you that want a little kick without the buzz from, alcohol. You'll get the buzz from the caffeine, though. Check out today. Brood.store. This is a Kentucky Proud product, roasted right in your own backyard. Brood.store. Support the show. It's cheaper per pound than most of those other boutique coffees. And it's available whole bean, ground, K-Cups. However you make your coffee, we got you covered. And you're back on the Andrew Cooperrider Show, still digging into, we will for the rest of the day, into this massive amount of money being spent here in this House Bill 900 going through this $300 million in waste that I have flagged, saying, look, guys, this looks a little wasteful. Here's another one. $3 million to the Louisville Ballet. Now, keep in mind, the Louisville Ballet does pretty well on their own. They are having net income to the tunes of over $1 million a year. They have net assets to the tunes of about $6 or $7 million a year, according to their Form 990. But yet, we're writing them a check for $3 million. And I have questions about if that's a good use of funds. Let's keep in mind the Louisville Ballet does things like puts on social justice rap classes. And you know, that's another thing. They put on these social justice rap classes. They do this programming that just from a sheer political standpoint, okay, do you think, like, this is a conservative legislature. If they don't fund the ballet, the Louisville Ballet, first, it'd be perfectly fine. It does fine on its own. But two, if they don't fund it, do they think that, they'll be voted out of office or something? Do you think the incentives is for you to give $3 million to the ballet or or not to fund the ballet? Which do you think your voters, Republicans, care more about? Something to think about. Here's something else here. They got $2 million for the installation of an LED lighting system on the Purple People's Bridge. You're hitting potholes. You got bridges falling apart. You got, pieces of bridges falling off, hitting cars. I mean, you can't go through a main street in Kentucky without potholes. I can tell you this. I've driven through many main streets in Kentucky, whether it's through campaigning, whether it's through just my travels in general. I go all over the state, travel all the time. The main street in like every single town is just awful. It's full of potholes. It's incredibly bumpy. You go through it, you're like, just bumping all around. And here we are dropping $2 million on a LED lighting system. Now we're getting into the nonprofits. There's a few nonprofits here that I want to discuss. One is $2 million to Shakertown Village. Now, I enjoy Shakertown as much as the next guy. I was just at Shakertown Village, actually. Took my wife out to the, the fellowship table. They have a restaurant out there. Took my wife out to the restaurant out there. Very nice, great food. Fantastic food. You should check it out. I have no problem with Shakertown Village. Sure, what they talk about is interesting in their tours, and they offer things that people are into. I mean, obviously, I went to their restaurant out there, but here's the thing. Shakertown Village is a private nonprofit that had a net income of over $2.1 million last year. Is sitting on over $20 million in net assets. I think they don't need our $2 million. I think the private donors have been taking care of that place just fine. And if you want to donate to Shakertown Village, go for it. And look, as I go through these, once again, I'm not saying everything they do is absolutely horrific. All I'm saying is that, of course, they do something good. That's their defense. They're a nonprofit. Most of them will have something that people can point to and say, look, this is good. You just hate them. The point is, though, is that it is very easy to be altruistic with other people's money, isn't it? But sometimes there's certain nonprofits that just don't need our money, even if we support what they're doing, because they're doing fine financially. And that brings me to another nonprofit here. $3 million to Goodwill, Kentucky to expand a location in Fayette County. Now, look, Goodwill, Kentucky brought in $138.2 million in revenue last year with a net income just shy over $5 million and has $184 million in net assets. It has 23 employees making over $100,000 per year, and Goodwill Kentucky's CEO makes over $450,000 annually. That is a nonprofit that's doing fine. They don't need $3 million to expand a location in Fayette County. They got it. They make over that in a year in net income. And apparently they got it to burn. I mean, if you can pay your CEO, $450K, if you've got in net assets, that means minus their liabilities, $184 million. I think if you want to expand out a location, spend $3 million to do it, you should go for it. But the rest of us shouldn't have to pay for it to continue to fund your high-paid job scheme, it seems like you got going on there. Here's another, this is a for-profit company, $2 million to the private company Space Tango to assist with the space economy. Space Tango is a company in Lexington that does, I believe they develop, I've actually heard the founder give a speech once. They develop like boxes, these scientific modules to do experiments in space that are used like in the space station, I guess, and they just kind of like plug in and then they read back the data. So it's like they have this box and you put your experiment in it, whatever that may be, and then they put it on a rocket. Like they don't have rockets. They put it on someone else's rocket and shoot it off to space and then put it on there. But this is a, private for-profit company, Space Tango. It's not a nonprofit. It's not owned by the taxpayers. It has private investors, people that have dumped money into it. And we're giving them another just $2 million. Here's cash. $2 million, do with it what you want. Last I checked, Kentucky, we've seen what happens when Kentucky gets into the startup business at times. We've seen App Harvest. That was a startup company that everybody hailed as amazing, went down. Of course, the Ford battery plant, while it was Ford, so you think, oh, that's not a startup. Their battery plant, their electric vehicle divisions are essentially startups. We put a lot of money into those startups. It doesn't go well. These are not established companies, and we just dump millions of dollars into them and I guess hope they work out. And you do have to lead to the questions of vetting. How are we coming to the conclusion to give them this money? Which leads to another tech startup set aside where they put $2.5 million aside to go to the Economic Development Cabinet, which, by the way, remember, is controlled by the Beshear administration, to invest in Kentucky tech startups. It doesn't say any parameters in the bill on any rules about these tech startups. I guess it's whichever ones catch the eyes of the people in charge of the $2.5 million. It must be nice to have $2.5 million in angel funding at your disposal that comes from the taxpayer to pick and choose what companies to put it in. That's the other thing about all this economic development money being handed out. Are you saying you really trust, with the track record Beshear has, the Beshear administration, to hand out these tens of millions and millions of dollars with no parameters on them whatsoever? Without even creating another oversight tool of how this money's being spent? I don't know. It just seems iffy to me. Well, we've got a few more here to dig through. We've got Film Foundation. Speaking of one thing on the tech startups, $950,000 to Whitley County Fiscal Court to support the development of an innovation hub. Now, these innovation hubs have typically been nomenclature for these tech startup hubs. They end up pulling in millions of dollars to help people start companies, and everybody's left kind of looking for the results of that. What's the big companies you've put together? How much money has that generated? Is there any agreement that they have to stay in? That's the other thing about this Kentucky tech startups. Is there any agreement they have to stay in Kentucky? Is that required? Who's going to get to set that? But hey, it's just a little couple milli between friends. It's no big deal. Well, going into next segment, we'll be finishing out discussing all this money being spent, all of your money. We'll have that when we get back here on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. And you're back on this final segment of the Andrew Cooperrider Show, digging through this House Bill 900, all the things that have been earmarked of your taxpayer funds. We've talked about the ballet, Shakertown, $2 million to Space Tango. Here's one, $500,000 to the Kentucky Film Foundation to provide one-time startup funding. There you go. There's more money being put into the movie business, which, as we all know, is known for staying put, not leaving to just go to another country or state. Doesn't really matter which one, but either one, country or state, that will offer them the best amount of money. It has real staying power. It's not one of those industries where you got to keep shelling out the tax breaks and keep giving them money until, of course, they. And if you stop, like a ransom, if you stop, they're not going to leave. That's definitely the case. Here's another one here. This is $4 million to Camp Landing Entertainment District, which appears to be a for-profit property developer. I believe it is. I got a little bit of confirmation on this. So this is a for-profit property developer that took a old mall in, I believe, Greene County, took an old mall and redeveloped it, and now is renting it out to Malibu Jacks, a movie theater, other businesses. I'm told a casino might be in there too as well. I don't know. I haven't been there, but I was just looking at their website. So I'm told a casino might be in there as well, maybe a racetrack going in. And the defense, when I posted about this online, the defense of this is, look, they're doing great things for the community. They're building up a lot of jobs, bringing in a lot of opportunities, building up the economy. They deserve that $4 million. Just a little $4 million. Just $4 million. That's it. Andrew, what are you, Scrooge? But my response to that is okay, if the horse track that apparently is being built and the casino that is, I guess, being built or built, the Malibu Jacks, the movie theater, all those things, if those are doing so great in this Camp Landing Entertainment District, if they're generating so much revenues, and this is a business that can support itself and is really contributing to the economy in a way that offsets the amount of taxpayer dollars being given to it, why does it need $4 million then to do repairs to the building? Because this is for developing the property. It's for work on the property, $4 million. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Here's another one, $3.2 million to the Louisville Orchestra, which has a net revenue in the millions. I'm going to tie that in with another one here that is $10 million to the Kentucky Center for the Arts, which is the landlord for the Opera House, and I believe, too, the ballet. So in that one ecosystem, we've given them nearly $20 million. And let's remember, too, the Kentucky Center for the Arts hosts events like drag shows. So there we go. There's our taxpayer funding, once again, going to supporting and funding drag shows. Moving on, though, another topic here for you. The zoo, Louisville Zoo, got $5 million. Now, earlier in this year, I made a post about this little flamingo right here. It's called Ferky, the flamingo. And all the legislators, the zoo walked that little flamingo around. All the legislators, they took their little pictures with that flamingo. Don't begrudge them for it. Hey, if a cute little flamingo came in my office, I'd want to take a little picture with it too. No problem there. But at the time, I remarked, to watch that funding, Louisville Zoo about to get a little something extra. You don't bring in a cute animal for them all to pose with unless you're going to turn around and use emotional blackmail to see if you can reach into the taxpayer's pocket and get a few extra shekels for yourself. And that's what they did. That little flamingo worth $5 million. That's what the zoo got. Like I said, don't hate the zoo. Once again, one of those things, though, seems pretty busy every time I'm there. Seems like it should be able to, support itself. But, just an idea. Zoos typically do pretty well. They are tourist attractions and draws. They should do pretty well. But I guess it needs $5 million one-time funding. This is the other thing, too, as we go through and we talk about these businesses. Remember, this is one-time funding projects. So they're supposed to be. The idea of these projects, according to the budget committees, is that these projects are one-time projects that don't add to the budget, but they're supposed to be one-time things that if we just pay out this money one time, it's an investment and it'll lead to other things. It'll lead to us getting a return on that investment. Well, first, going back to the economic development funds, because there's another $158 million, an unnamed or seeming ambiguous economic development project, $158 million there. So that's, roughly close to that $300 million just by itself that I'm talking about there. And I just wonder, they say these are investments that we're making in Kentucky, but when do those investments pay off? When do we make a return on our investment? It seems like all that happens with these investments, if they somehow are actually making money, and I think you would be shocked at how little information they actually have on the efficacy, on the long-term effectiveness, on the return, the expected return, when they'll make a return. Like that kind of data just isn't out there. They just don't do those kinds of studies. But if these are our taxpayer funds, these are our dollars, and so if we're investing in these things, we should get a payoff for that investment, right? I think so. Hopefully you think so. So my question would be, if we're supposed to get a payoff for that investment, when do we realize that investment? When do our taxes go down? When does the do I have to pay less in taxes? Because that'd be the idea. Look, Andrew, sure, over the past couple of years, we invested a couple of billion into giving it to private companies to bring jobs here to Kentucky. But look, this is an investment. And when it pays off, you're going to pay less in taxes. Do you think that's true? If you do, you're born yesterday. Because I tell you what, our taxes aren't going down. Our net tax burden isn't going down. Sure, they're lowering our income tax, and they say, look at us, we're lowering your income tax. But you know what? Our net tax burden is going up. 5%, it's going up. And they just want more and more and more. Just want more. $400,000 to Harlan County to upgrade an inn owned by the county. That's nice. Good for them. $450,000 to the Leadership Kentucky Foundation. This is a nonprofit with over $1.1 million in annual revenue, a net income of $308,000, and more than $3 million in assets. And we're giving them $450,000 for this. Best as I can tell, is just a networking group. I don't know. I sent an email actually to Leadership Kentucky Foundation Monday, asking them to respond by Thursday, as I had questions about their group and what exactly they're going to spend our $450,000 on. It's supposed to go towards this, I think it's called Rise Academy or something like that. It just looks like a networking group, because you look at their 990s, you see a lot of money spent on salaries, a lot of money spent on travel, a lot of money spent on meals and entertainment. That's like their highest line items. So it seems like just a nonprofit slush fund for the who's who to have a good time. That's what it appears like to me. But, you know, I'm willing to be fair, so I sent them some questions, asked them to follow up on it. Also sent some questions over to a group called Backroads Appalachia. They're building they got just south of $4 million. This wasn't in this group. They got some more money in this bill as well. But they got just south of $4 million to build a 200-acre rally driving school, off-road training school. Once again, questions about what the return is on that. But, you know, send an email to them. So once I hear back from them, I will let you guys know. So that's just a few of the things going through there. Something for you to really think about. Now, as I said, I'm not saying all these things are necessarily, maybe you agree with some, maybe you disagree with others. What I'm saying, though, is that at least we should have had discussion. But we didn't get that with this bill. We don't get that out of the legislature. We don't get the conversation. And then the few people who want to have the conversations are ostracized or attacked. Or worse yet, they turn voters against them and try to get them to vote against them. Definitely leads to some questions. Well, y'all, that's what we got time for today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. I thank you all so much for joining me. We'll be back next week. Keep your eyes peeled tomorrow. If you're listening to this on the day it comes out Tuesday on social media. Tomorrow, I will be interviewing Nate Morris, First Senate. I'll be doing that as I fill my slot on Kentucky's Voice radio show there out of Louisville, and I'll be sitting down with him. So look forward to that. Until next time, we'll be seeing you.